So thanks for sitting with me through that land acknowledgement. And I do support all historically marginalized groups on their journeys of self-determination, including Indigenous peoples and including the disability community, of which I am a member. And as Sarah mentioned, I became a member of the neurodiverse population when I received my diagnosis of autism at midlife. And so I was autistic my whole life, I just didn't know it. And I've been a member of the disability population my whole life, and I didn't know it until I received that autism diagnosis. And I realized that not everyone considers the neurodiverse population as members of the disability population, and not every neurodivergent individual considers themselves a member of the disability population. However, I am including for the purposes this afternoon, and so I hope you'll consider that as we move through. So it seemed that for a presentation focused on neurodiversity, it would be appropriate to start with the definition of neurodiversity. So it's a concept that was coined by Australian sociologist Judy Singer to discuss differences, naturally occurring differences in human brain makeups, including dyslexia, dyspraxia, autism, and attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder. These differences present most often in variances in social communication and interpersonal relations, appreciating, of course, that there's a vast spectrum of characteristics and traits. A few other important points that I'm asking if you could bear in mind as we move through this afternoon are that individuals can have a dual diagnosis. So for example, autism and ADHD, or autism and dyslexia. And I do want to highlight that October is Dyslexia Awareness Month. There's a high level of co-occurring conditions across the neurodiverse spectrum, especially around depression and anxiety. And neurodiversity is not limited to any race, ethnicity, or gender. And as Sarah mentioned, and as I mentioned, I'm living proof. And the main reason I got involved in neurodiverse advocacy and employment is because of my realization and my deep regret that the majority of the neurodiverse population worldwide is either unemployed or underemployed. And this places a great burden on the individual and society at large. And it's unnecessary because we have lots of talents and skills to share. So I want you to know that as we move through, and as I mentioned, that I consider neurodiversity part of disability. I do come from a strengths-based approach to neurodiversity and to disability. And in fact, I say that we're the ability and society is the dis. It's society's unwillingness to modify and adapt that's in our way. We're not in the way. Again, we're ability. And so I'm really pleased to be with you during Disability Employment Awareness Month when we're highlighting some of these realities. And on that note, the Charity Report released this article this month, and I have a snapshot of it here for you. And it's available online, and it speaks to the opportunities within the charitable sector to make it more inclusive for people with disabilities. And there's a quote here from Openly Autistic founder and CEO, Leah, which I think highlights some of these points really well. When we limit people by not accommodating their disabilities, we limit our organizations, we limit our thinking and our creativity. We limit the lived experiences we have around the table. So again, Leah's openly autistic, and she knows definitely some of these issues. And so because I come from the strengths-based approach to neurodiversity and disability, it really allows me a path to share with you why neurodiversity is important to understand. And if we put our skills and talents aside for a moment, it's really fundamentally about human rights. Neurodiverse population members, disability population members are entitled to the same human rights as anyone else. We have the right to live without discrimination, fear of any kind, and we have the right to be employed. And there are also some practical reasons for recognizing why these rights we are entitled to. We're approximately 15% of the population. So approximately 1 in 7 individuals are neurodivergent. And we are strong in hidden talent pool. And this article speaks to that. And it's from research conducted by Dr. Rob Austin at the Ivey School of Business at Western University and his co-author, Gary Pisano. And they actually speak to the talent and skills around pattern recognition, memory, and recall. So back to what I said at the beginning is that neurodiversity usually comes in the form of differences in communication and interpersonal relations. This can be realized through strengths. Because we process information differently and we see things that other people might not see, we see solutions that might otherwise go unnoticed or overlooked. So the neurodiverse population has a lot to offer in the workplace, even though we are not participating at the levels that we want to, or frankly, that we have the right to. So what does recruitment and retention of neurodiverse talent entail? Well, number one, it means committing to tenets of inclusive hiring, which is about availing opportunities and resources to ensure that we're not excluded. And it's not just saying that you believe them, but it's actually demonstrating that you believe in these practices and that you recognize and celebrate diversity across the vast spectrum. And perhaps this is reflective in your job postings or other communications about your workplace and your organization. Perhaps it's about ensuring that the interview process clearly outlines what the job is and what it involves on the day-to-day. This article, published actually just last month, so in September, talks about some good news. The onus is shifting from the employee to other employees in the workplace. So up to now, mainly the onus has been on the neurodivergent employee to conform, to adapt, to modify. We're seeing that the onus is shifting. And I am just seeing some comments that we're already getting in the chat, which is great. So thanks for that. And so we really want to see neurodiverse employees thrive in the workplace. And we know that when our talents and skills are matched with goals and objectives, that we can thrive and we can flourish and we can be highly valuable. So this is why I subscribe to the IDEA framework, and I've learned to add an A. So if we're going to truly have an inclusive, diverse, equitable society, then we also need to have an accessible society. And although traditionally I have thought, and maybe you have thought, about accessibility from the standpoint of physical disability inclusion, it actually fits with disabilities like neurodiversity. So it's a matter of making everything reachable, enterable, and approachable for everyone. And that includes for different brain makeups. And this does mean provoking new thinking about accessibility. And frankly, it means provoking new thinking about disability and diversity, because along with a range of diversity around race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, since disability and neurodiversity as dimensions of diversity. And this is something I always highlight whenever I have the chance to speak. And I spoke about it recently during this interview as part of the Startup Women's Startup Canada podcast. And I always say, it's never a matter of taking anything away. It's always understanding, of course, all those aspects of diversity are so important: race, ethnicity, and gender. Never a matter of taking anything away, always a matter of adding neurodiversity and disability as dimensions of overall diversity. So, okay, we've already had a chance to chat about the realities that we are a talented pool, and we're frankly a hidden pool. So if you agree that's true, how do you support neurodiverse employees in the workplace? Well, if you've hired us and you want to retain us, start by accommodating our needs. So remember I said the variances usually exist in communication and working relationships. We'll think about supporting those differences. So accommodations may come in the form of support in two-way communication. So perhaps translation, having someone assigned to your neurodiverse employee to help ensure open, trusting, and two-way communication. It may come in the form of assistive devices. So remember I mentioned that we have a higher level of sensory processing difficulty, so assistive devices to help with that. It may come in the form of having a quiet place to retreat. And a lot of these supports came into place overnight for COVID. So a lot of these accommodations that really played in neurodiverse talent that disability champions were championing for years or decades came in place overnight when we moved to work from home offices due to COVID. So especially around customized supervisory communication styles, increased technological support, and flexibility around locations and hours. We had been told that they couldn't be done, whether it was because of inconvenience or cost, and then they were put in place. So now we know that they can be there. And another thing that's really important is that these supports that are put in place, perhaps through accommodation, have much wider benefit. And Kate Russell from Microsoft speaks to that. Inclusion and accessibility are incredible in that we often find what employees request in the form of accommodations to suit their needs as individuals and do their best work are actually excellent practices for many other facets of individual diversity. So subtitles in PowerPoint created for the hard of hearing community, really beneficial, for example, for people for whom English is their second language, and can be an aid for the neurodiverse population who perhaps needs that consistency in terms of focusing when a presentation is being delivered. And here's a photo of myself with Kate 2 years ago when we were still having in-person events. And so I've spoken in some general terms, and I understand in preparing for this and in speaking with Sarah that there's some specific challenges in hiring and retaining in Alberta, where our hosts are from, Jasper Employment and Education Center. And there's some specific challenges in hiring and retaining in some key industries. And I understand specifically tourism, hospitality, and restaurant. And so I wanted to give some specific application of everything I've said thus far. I wanted to make it specific for you. And so I'm highlighting a family friend, Carrie. She is currently a chef in a daycare, but she's been a kitchen manager in a restaurant. And Carrie knows how to play to people's strengths. She is always open to new ways of thinking, and she enjoys it when her own currently held beliefs are challenged. Carrie really understands how to get individual team members and a whole team to buy into short and long-term goals in order to make their vision a reality. And Carrie says the number one thing that she looks for when hiring is humility. And for her, that means an individual's willingness to really contribute to the team and be a team player. Carrie also focuses on really clear communication with employees and positive working relationships with them and with each other. Carrie fully embraces all aspects of individual identity and believes that room should be made for that in the workplace for everyone to bring their full selves to work, and that everyone should be able to make a fresh start every day. Carrie delegates according to individual talents and strengths. She understands the importance of being clear when delegating and then holding people account for delivery. How does this apply in a hotel or a restaurant? Well, according to Carrie, through clear expectations and clear standards around timeliness, cleanliness, professionalism, and standards of quality. She believes in having a clear schedule that outlines work and breaks, and the importance of longer breaks in some cases. And she also appreciates that there can be vast differences in terms of the need for socialization at work and through the form of staff socials and other gatherings. And I wish to highlight how important all of this is for the neurodiverse population. I want to highlight for you Carrie's commitment to open, clear, honest, straightforward, and trusting communication. How she always makes time for her team members to speak honestly with her, including about the supports they require in their role. This is all built on building understanding and trust, and really seizing the opportunity to understand any issues before they become misunderstandings in the workplace. When it comes to the neurodiverse population, I really want to highlight for you that Carrie suspends her judgment when she's getting to know a person. And she does not believe there's one way of communicating or interacting, or that one way is better than any other. She really focuses on the individual and that every individual can make a contribution. In other words, Carrie understands the importance of individual identity and diversity across all aspects in our workplace. And as an extension of this, I want to highlight for you the vast diversity across the spectrum of neurodiversity. And we don't have time this afternoon to dig in too much to intersectionality. You could actually take a whole post-secondary course on it. I did want to highlight that the reality is there's multiple dimensions to our individual identity. And it's really important to understand, that there's increased barriers depending on those aspects of identity. And they're particularly important to understand when power structures come into play. So to make it real for you, I always have to remember that as a white, straight, autistic woman, even though I experience barriers and I've experienced discrimination and negative stereotypes, I haven't experienced the discrimination and the negative stereotypes and barriers that, for instance, autistic Black women experience, autistic Indigenous women experience, and members of the LGBTQ2+ community. So that's actually one of the reasons I do what I do, is because I think that given my privilege, I need to use it as a platform to help make a smoother path for others. So to highlight intersectionality, I have here for you a photo of Chief Cadmus Delorme, who is chief of the Cowessess First Nation on Treaty 4 territory. And he's doing a lot within his leadership role to increase awareness and understanding of autism. I also am highlighting for you this photo in case you wish to look it up. It's from a 60-minute segment that's entitled Talent on the Spectrum. And there's so much you can learn from it. And there's so much you can learn about autistic talent, the barriers, some of the possibilities in terms of hiring and retaining neurodiverse talent. It's really impactful. And the other reason I want to highlight it for you is that because I want you to know as we're moving through this afternoon, I'm not saying that you need to strike a neurodiverse talent and retention program within your workplace. You can learn a lot from what's already going on, and that includes individuals with lived experience. So when it comes to neurodiversity and intersectionality and the various aspects of our identity, and knowing that some individuals and groups face increased barriers depending on those aspects of identity, back to the basics: celebrate diversity, practice equity, recognize inclusion, and enable accessibility for all. Because the bottom line is that diversity inclusion is better for everyone. And here is yet another indication that the importance of neurodiversity as part of diversity is being recognized. And this snapshot for you is from the Government of Canada webpage. And in this case, it relates to neurodiversity in the Department of Defense. Diversity is definitely a strength. When you are able to go to work and know that your individual identity is going to be recognized and celebrated, that people are truly interested, you perform at a higher level, you're more productive, and diverse teams and diverse organizations tend to outperform their peers. And so diversity on teams really needs to be there, and individuals need to be represented. Representation matters, and you really need to see it to be it. Which provides a segue to highlight what I always say, and that is neurodiverse talent belongs at all levels of organizations. From the boardroom to the C-suite to the office cubicle, neurodiverse talent can flourish and thrive when our aptitudes are appreciated and matched with organizational goals and objectives. And to give a specific example to you, I'm using this opportunity to highlight Charlotte Valeur because she's a living embodiment of inclusive leadership. She's a UK autistic executive, and she is actually helping to launch the Neurodiversity Institute, which is having its official launch tomorrow, October 15th. And the Institute of Neurodiversity is really helping to ensure that neurodiversity is celebrated around the globe in various ways: neurodiverse supports, neurodiverse networks. Charlotte's championing all of this through her experience, her lived experience as a woman who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 50. And you can still register for that launch tomorrow. I'm registered for it, and there's still room. So my final points are about worldwide movements, because I just mentioned the Institute of Neurodiversity, which is a worldwide movement. So We the 15 campaign was launched just before the Paralympics this summer. And it's about the 15% of us worldwide who have disabilities. And at a time when there's more emphasis on diversity and inclusion, the disability community worldwide has decided it's time for us to have our own movement. And it's about disability visibility, inclusion, and accessibility. And the Valuable 500 is a partner of We15. And one of the calls to action, a banner that Sarah mentioned that I write and speak under, is the Inclusion Revolution. And it was launched in 2018 to spearhead broader thinking about disability, especially disability employment. And the Valuable 500, which focuses on inclusion through business leadership and opportunity, was named as such because they've secured signatures from 500 private sector corporations to commit that they're making disability employment a high agenda item at the decision-making levels of their organization. Because the worldwide population, the 15% of us, again, we're largely unemployed or underemployed, and that needs to change, and our potential is no longer going to be ignored. And both of these are running concurrent to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, so SDGs with specific targets towards 2030, and includes towards the achievement of disability inclusion development. So back in Canada, there's the 50-30 challenge, and thinking about Charlotte and the importance of inclusive leadership and representation at all levels, I'm really encouraged that the 50-30 challenge is happening. You can sign up for it. Liberty Co has over 13 organizations, as noted here, has signed up. And it's to challenge organizations and help build representation in senior management ranks and at the board level. It's open to all organizations. There's various streams. It's about working towards 50% gender parity and then 30% representation from underrepresented groups. That includes persons with disabilities, neurodiverse. It also includes Black, racialized, Indigenous peoples. And you can learn more on their website. And so in conclusion, I am asking you what I ask every audience I speak with, and that is, in this post-Me Too era of Black Lives Matter and Indigenous reconciliation with disability justice as the burgeoning social movement, will you join the inclusion revolution? Thank you, and I'm so looking forward to the Q&A period.
Thank you, Wanda. Your insight is phenomenal, and I love the Inclusion Revolution banner. I'm also curious to hear what questions people have this afternoon. So with that in mind, I'll ask that if you do have a question, you use the raise your hand feature. You should see it in the bottom right corner, and then I can call on you accordingly and get you to unmute yourself. Well, I actually have a question for you, Wanda. The first is, so Jasper is a town that's founded in tourism, and we definitely have seasonal employment here. So how can we as employment counselors better support neurodiverse talent in the seasonal nature of the work here?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. The first thing I'd like to say is that an opportunity for recruitment in seasonal positions may be with the disability population, and within that, the neurodiverse population, because the reality is so many people are looking for jobs. So according to the Government Canada, there's something like 500 to 600,000 disabled Canadians looking for work right now. So the reality is there may be more people who are open to seasonal employment. So I guess that's the first thing I would offer you to consider is availability. The other things that I would look at would be what's already working now. So organizations who are successfully recruiting seasonally, what's working for them? And then I would apply what I've just shared, I would apply that to it. So taking what's working and then thinking, okay, is the recruitment disability friendly? Is the recruitment neurodiverse friendly? Are there barriers that might exist that we haven't thought of? So going back to those job postings, going back to the language, going back to the interview process, are there things that are creeping in that are acting as barriers that perhaps haven't been obvious, but it's time to take another look with a disability lens and a neurodiverse lens? Is everything clear? When you get to the interview process, does it clearly outline what the job is? The reason why I always highlight it is because of my own experiences in the workplace. So what I thought the job was and what the job actually was were two different things. But it wasn't obvious through the traditional interview process, because the traditional interview process focused more on the people you're going to be working with, the people you're going to be reporting to, and not necessarily the people you're going to be working with every day and how you're going to be interacting with them. It was very different. And those are the things that served as barriers when I got to the workplace. So I guess to recap, Sarah, find out what's working, add a disability lens and a neurodiverse lens to it. If you think things are clear in terms of job postings, go through them again and again. Have another set of eyes, because biases creep in with experience. And then know that if you start to get response, if there is more interest, seasonal because of availability within this untapped talent pool, know that you might have to make some tweaks to your traditional processes, your postings, your communications and everything. However, if you can secure employees, know that if you make the investments, they will likely pay off, because disabled employees, neurodiverse employees tend to be more loyal and they tend to stay because they understand the preciousness of the job. And, you know, we only had like 20-25 minutes during the presentation, so obviously I couldn't include everything, but if you want to take a look at that talent on the spectrum, something that comes through about the autistic employees is that they are so loyal and they really understand the preciousness of a job, because we have to work so hard to get them. Hope that's helpful.
Yes, fantastic. That was very helpful. Next, we'll have Crystal. Just ask you to unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you, Wanda, for all the wonderful knowledge that you're sharing. I recently read that a lot of people with hidden disabilities tend to hide it because of their fear to be actually hired or to advance in their career path. My question for you is, how can employers open a safe space for their people with disabilities that are already hired, or even before they hire them, to feel safe to share, that they need certain accommodations? What would be the best way for the employer to do it?
Thanks so much, Crystal. That's such an important question. And actually, when I answer it, I am going to tie in a comment in the chat that's really important. And that is, we state neurodivergent candidates strongly encouraged to apply in every job posting. So state that in your job postings. What I always say, though, is that for people to not feel, Crystal, like there's a stigma, for people to feel like they can disclose, for people to see that they'll be accepted, they have to see current examples of that. So they need to see on web pages and in communications in social media and other communications about the workplace that diversity is truly valued and recognized and celebrated. And it is so important. And I know I said this before, however, I feel it's so important. I'm going to reinforce, it has to be at all levels. So there needs to be leaders disclosing that they have disabilities and openly talking about it and saying it is recognized as a strength in my workplace. We need we need people at all levels in various sectors saying this and doing this and practicing this. Something that I always highlight, because again, it made such a difference for me, and that is, I knew I was different for a large part of my life. I didn't know why. And then I received my diagnosis. And then looking at everything through a new prism, I realized that when I didn't feel included, other individuals and groups didn't feel included either. They felt excluded. I wasn't able to put it all together as to why I was particularly sensitive. So to get right at it, Crystal, what I'm saying is it's really important to me as a member of the neurodiverse population that when I see postings, when I see communications, that there's all kinds of diversity recognized and celebrated. So race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender, age, various education levels, because even if the organization says, we really support neurodiverse employees and everything I see is white, straight, abled men and women, I'm not going to believe it. So just to recap, really going back to the communications and all your practices, not just saying everything, but demonstrating that you really believe it, and practicing and celebrating, recognizing all aspects of diversity. And I guess just a final thing in terms of the stigma, it's not just hiding that you might have a disability, it's hiding your true self. And that comes at such a huge cost. I couldn't share everything that Kate from Microsoft has shared with me. There just wasn't time. But another thing that Kate talks about is people bringing themselves to work, their full selves, and what that does for productivity. It just increases productivity hugely. So if we can share more about the benefits, I think it will go a long way in bringing forward change. I hope that's helpful, Crystal.
Yes, thank you so much, Wanda. I appreciate it.
Sarah, is it okay if I acknowledge, there's such excellent comments here in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to acknowledge these are excellent comments from Carrie, and she saw the segment talent on the spectrum, felt it fell a bit short, not showing executive management level autistics. I'm seeing too many employers still hiring only entry level. Yes, Carrie, a million thanks for highlighting this. This is why within Liberty Co and what I do, there's an aspect on inclusive leadership, because autistics, disabled persons, all neurodiverse people, no, we are not going to be in only entry level, precarious, lowest paid positions. We're going to be at all levels of the organization. And again, back to Crystal's point, and how can we get all this across and demonstrating it like every previously underrepresented group. So again, red flag for me, if an organization does not have Black lead, and I know you can't have representation from every group depending on the size, but if it's a decent sized organization and there's no Black leaders, Indigenous leaders, racialized leaders, LGBTQ2+, red flags. It means that there is an inclusive leadership. So yeah, thanks Carrie for your openness. I recognize the weaknesses in talent on the spectrum. I also do offer it sometimes when I speak, because I feel that there are points that could be gleaned from it. And all of this, and maybe Sarah, this is a good time to say this, in everything I share, take what applies to you and leave what doesn't, because not everything is applicable in every case, but I always try to give general, and then some that might apply. And because of the Alberta reality, that's why I zeroed in on Carrie and restaurant and tourism hospitality. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Wanda. We'll ask Danelle Weinberg to unmute yourself, Danelle.
Hi, Wanda. I actually have two questions. I think the first one, definitely going through the workshops today and listening to what a lot of people are saying, is that they call it the Great Resignation in these past 18 months. And there's been this massive gap in the market, and that everybody is struggling to find employees. So because of that, they've kind of had to go into these hidden talent pools, whether it's people with disabilities, it's newcomers to Canada, immigrants. Do you feel that within these past 18 months that, that companies have gone into these hidden talent pools successfully, and that the neurodiverse talent pool has been one of those that they're tapping into, where before COVID, they probably didn't?
So the short answer to that is yes. Just saw another article released today in the Globe and Mail about how in the past year, more women have been appointed to boards than previously. I wasn't able to read the whole article because I was logging in to connect with Sarah. But, you know, again, it fell short though. Is it just white? Is the emphasis still on white women? Okay, so I wasn't able to get to the whole thing, but what I want you to know is that, yes, we're seeing more appointments. Just, you know, your news feed, my news feed, we're seeing more appointments in the past 18 months, not just to do with the Great Resignation, to do with the resurgence of Black Lives Matter, to do with that we actually need to seriously make a commitment to reconciliation. We're seeing more appointments of Indigenous leaders, boards, senior management. So there's no controlled experiment here. We have so many factors at play. We have COVID and all the outcomes of COVID. Part of that is the Great Resignation. We have racial movements that have not had this level of activity since the 60s. We have the realities of the she session. So it's undeniable that women have been adversely impacted by COVID. They were already underrepresented before, but COVID has really put the spotlight on injustice and lack of opportunity and underrepresentation in a way that people who were denying it before. So the short answer is yes, there's been progress with all of these areas. Yes, we're seeing more recognition in terms of the talent of persons with disabilities because COVID has put the spotlight on who was one of the groups first hit by COVID, persons with disabilities. So yeah, there's more awareness. Yes, more action is happening. There's more appointments. Companies are being more aware. The reality is we were so far behind in some of these areas that it's going to take a while. And I just spoke with this about this with a board the other night. You know, when it comes to the 50-30 challenge, and someone had a question about that, you know, they're not asking for huge change overnight. If you sign up to the Black North, they're not asking for huge change overnight. They know that some of this change is going to take time. It's going to take weeks and months, but the commitment has to be there to make the change. So it's a huge question. I hope some of that is helpful. And someone asked, is 50-30 challenge for Canada? Yes, it is, as is the Black North. However, there's similar challenges out there. And the global and the Valuable 500 was one. So they secured their signatories. That was worldwide. They got 500. Now there's We the 15. So if you're talking to colleagues in the US and beyond, and they're disappointed the 50-30 challenge doesn't apply there, there's other models that you can engage in. Danelle, for all the realities that you just touched upon, there's we have to do something about, yeah, these inequities.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
So before we move to Lindsay, it looks like there are some more comments in the chat box.
And I agree with everything Carrie is saying. Yes, having autistic professionals involved in the hiring process. Again, that's one of the reasons I decided to share my story publicly, is in the hope that it would spur other people to share their story, and then other people to share their story. And then, yes, we will have more people in the workplace disclosing, decreasing stigma. And yes, thank you, Carrie. Thank you for highlighting the importance of psychological safety. Great, LinkedIn. Yeah, remote work. Yeah, remote work, again, it's a great benefit to some individuals and groups, not to everyone. I realize not everyone wants to work remotely. It's a matter of having options. And it's a matter of having options that play to your talents and strengths, that work for the employer as well. And back to what I said about some of these things were things that the disability champions were asking for years and being denied. It's a matter of knowing that the options exist, and it's not going to be an automatic no. It's not going to be no, especially when, it's too expensive, it's too inconvenient. Assistive devices, noise canceling headphones, they're not too expensive. A quiet place to retreat, depending on your work site, because of sensory processing challenges or whatever. No, that's not impractical. That's something that can be. And again, customized communication, put them in place, especially for supervisor, clear communication, they're good for everyone. There isn't one thing that I sought because I was autistic that I knew wasn't good for everyone. But the willingness wasn't there to listen and understand. And I guess that's where I'm going with and Danelle's question. We're not there overnight or in 18 months or anything in terms of the numbers. We're starting to see a shift in the mindset. There's going to be a more open communication, an open conversation about what people need. It's not going to be an automatic no, because we put so much in place overnight due to COVID. What else can we do in this virtual world?
Thanks, Wanda. Lindsay, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Yeah, thanks. Seguli, hello, my name's Lindsay Newcats. I'm speaking to you from Kingston, Ontario, which is traditional Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Huron-Wendat territory. Thanks, Wanda. Loving your talk. And I really like the point about the need for neurodivergent leaders to step forward and, claim their authentic selves. And I'm just wondering, what might it look like to support workers who are already in the workplace, but maybe they don't have a diagnosis or they're new to their diagnosis and they don't know what accommodations they need, or just don't have the capacity to be that advocate for themselves.
Yeah, that's a great question, Lindsay. What I offer is to put back to you, because I think you answered part of your question. More people who aren't diagnosed, who hear about other people who are, will perhaps lead to increased diagnosis. And if it doesn't lead to increased diagnosis, right away, it will decrease the stigma and increase inclusion over time. Because even if people don't apply to themselves and say, I think I need to go and seek diagnosis, like I did, they will start to connect the dots. Wanda went and got a diagnosis. She's openly talking about it. She's being supported in the workplace. Okay, maybe that means if I need supports, even if I'm not aware that I'm autistic or neurodivergent, or if I need supports, maybe I'll ask for them, because I know Wanda's getting them. And then, okay, so Wanda's come forward with her diagnosis. She's openly talking. That means that Steve, who has obsessive compulsive disorder, is openly talking about his diagnosis, and he's being supported and he's successful. And then, the snowball effect, like we can spiral down, but we spiral up. And again, I saw Carrie's comment about the spotlight on mental health due to COVID. And it's so true. And thanks again, Carrie, for highlighting that. Because of COVID, I think there's more openness and awareness about mental health in the workplace than we've ever seen before. And the other thing, Lindsay, is being open, like going back, like, think Carrie. Carrie is there for her people. And she carves out time. She says, like, when she was in the restaurant, it was every 6 months there was coffee with Carrie. I'm not saying wait 6 months to talk to your supervisor, but just if you have a supervisor who's open and available, your employees can see that. And so if they're struggling, if they need some support, I know you can't tell someone to go get a diagnosis, but if there's open, trusting, honest, straightforward two-way conversation, that will lead to more open, trusting, honest conversations, which will then lead to, getting things out in the open that might not otherwise come out in the open. And I just see it as a process. And again, positive builds on positive. I hope that helps. It's a big question. It's a really important question.
And it looks like there are some more questions in the chat. Oh, it's
Employee resource group.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Again, we're seeing more. I've had people reach out to me during COVID about their employee resource groups. They want to make disability and neurodiversity part of it. If I hear one thing, Sarah, it's that, and goes back to someone, we're still not necessarily considering diversity and neurodiversity as dimensions of overall diversity. So I've had people reach out and say, yeah, we have an employee resource group, but disability isn't there. Disability is over here. And so I've had conversations with people about, okay, how can we help make that happen? Because they want to be represented, they want it to be part of it. And yeah, it's still not entirely there. So, but there's more happening with employee resource groups. Again, COVID, a resurgence of Black Lives Matter, Indigenous reconciliation. So, I mean, that is good news.
Are there steps that you could suggest to developing that sort of group for people with disabilities in the workplace, like moving them in inclusion with?
Yeah, a couple things. So who is sponsoring the employee resource group? Who's making it happen? So there's usually executive sponsors. Again, it goes back to the inclusive leadership. I always say that if neurodiversity and disability are going to be embedded in the organization as true aspects of diversity, it has to come from the top. So what's your leadership doing? What are they saying? What are they practicing? Are there disabled people who are leaders? Okay, then who are the sponsors of the employee resource groups? And is it the CEO? Is it vice presidents? As long as the leadership's there, is really coming. And then talk to them. And look, this is why, or I should say part of the reason why I always, when I speak, I go global. Because if you're, depending on your company, if you're bringing forward some of these points, you want to be able to say, oh, and the world, there's this global movement, We the 15, like I think We the 15 is going to take off in a way that no other disability movement has. And then it's going to be with employers, ooh, who doesn't want to be involved? Do you really want to be the one who's not involved? I saw Deloitte on LinkedIn. You're laughing, Sarah, but I saw Deloitte. I saw Deloitte the other day. We signed on to the Valuable 500. We're part of the Valuable 500. It's become so successful under the leadership of Caroline Casey and Paul Pullman that there's corporations that don't want to be able to say, we're not on it. So, and then again, so globally, that's why I include these resources to empower people and make it easier for people. And then nationally, that's why I've been dropping in the 50-30. I know not everyone can commit, but again, I want to empower people to be able to go to their leadership and say, here's the 50-30, here's the website, 1,300 organizations on side. Maybe we can take a look. and they're coming out with the specs for it. Again, they're not looking for 180 change overnight. It's over weeks and months. So, yeah.
I'm not seeing any hands here or anything in the chat, but I had another question. I had read some literature earlier today, and it had said that neurodiverse teams are 30% more productive than their counterparts. Why is that? Can you speak to that?
Yeah. Okay, so that's going back to the article by Rob Austin and Gary Pisano. That's going back to the articles. It's taking a look again at talent on the spectrum. Please know, Sarah, and I know you understand, I want everyone to understand and go on record for saying, we're individuals. So what I'm about to say does not apply to everyone in the same way. We can be known for having very determined and dedicated focus. So when we set out to commit to something, we stay on track and we focus on it until it's done. We can also identify patterns and other things that our neurotypical peers do not necessarily. So that means for instance, in going through numbers, I can detect a difference that maybe someone else doesn't or doesn't as quickly, but I see that variance. That saves time. That means I can move on. Our variances in communication, again, and interpersonal relations means that we want to spend more time focusing on our work. And again, we have that dedicated focus and we take great pride. So we're not necessarily as interested at spending time at work on other things. Socialization, socials, parties. Okay, so I hope you understand when I work these things in, I try to be diplomatic because they don't apply to everyone. We want to be recognized as individuals. However, the proof stands on its own. Often great work ethic. Yes, thank you, Carrie. So it's all these things. Sometimes it's one, sometimes it's the combination. When we are celebrated for who we are and we can bring our authentic selves to work, that's another thing that really makes someone productive. So for me, the difference when I was accepted, I didn't have to mask my characteristics and traits. I could come to work. I knew I was happy. I could be productive. I got a lot done. Again, though, Sarah, that's something that can apply to any individual or group. That's good for the neurodiverse population. That's good for everyone. But it's a really big question, but those are some of the reasons why. Because the skills in those areas and characteristics and traits. And again, the Rob Austin article keeps coming up in searches, and that other article that I mentioned that just came out last month, that really speaks to it too. Alternauts has seen very little turnover. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, Carrie, absolutely. You make the commitment. Going back to what Carrie, my friend Carrie said, you make the investment, it will likely pay off. Loyal, hardworking, decreases turnover, increases morale, improves culture. Companies say that, and this was on the Government of Canada website, companies and organizations that hire persons with disabilities notice improved morale, better culture, more acceptance, and others feel that.
That's fantastic. Well, it looks like we're just coming to the top of the hour. So there's two things in the chat. Okay. 2007 to 2016,
Yeah.
percent of autistic adults were employed full time.
Yeah. Thank you, Ryan. I've included a statistic in Canada that I accessed. I've included them that in other presentations. It's quite dated, so I haven't included it in some of my more recent presentations. But that's what. So what I say is the majority is either unemployed or underemployed, because depending on the reference, you can get different numbers. So, but thanks, Ryan. And there's nice comments. I want to thank everyone for these great questions, Sarah.
Well, and I would just like to let everybody know that Wanda is available for continued conversation through her email, her LinkedIn, or the form on her website. And I'll put the website name in the chat. It's libertyco.ca. Just pop that in here. There we go. Okay. Well, thank you to everyone for making time in your busy day to join us this afternoon. I certainly appreciated everything that Wanda had to share and all of the great conversations. Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much, Sarah, for the opportunity. And I hope I do hear from some folks, as you mentioned, whether LinkedIn, my web form, or email.
Fantastic. Thanks, Wanda.
Thanks.